Mike. I said I'm an addict. My name's Mike. All right. I first met our speaker in October of 1990. I was at a World Service Conference quarterly in Los Angeles, California. The way I met was I was on the first date with her and what is now her husband. I guess I was like a fifth wheel or something. But, I would just say that she's from a Farsi-speaking group. That's her home group. And I'll let her tell you more about that. Without anything else, here's Seppi B. from Los Angeles, California.
My name is Tatiana. I'm really honored to be here. I knew I want to thank the committee for giving me the honor and the privilege to come here and share my experience, strength, and hope with you. And English is my second language, so if I kind of mess up here, please forgive me. When I get nervous, kind of my English gets a little weird. This morning, I've been having a rough couple of days. Just a lot of physical stuff going on. And this morning I went in the chapel we have here, and I wanted to meditate and get with God. And I walked in there and I met this gentleman that started talking to me about his understanding of his higher power. And my first feeling was I wanted to walk away. My first feeling was I wanted to reject what another addict had to say, which is a typical behavior for someone like me. And then something happened. My teaching in this program, the principle of open-mindedness kicked in, and I said, no, I'm going to listen. And everybody who God puts in my way has something to share with me that I need to hear. And I'm grateful for that today. I'm grateful that I can give you an opportunity to tell me what your opinion is, and I don't have to judge you today. And I wasn't like this when I got clean at all. The person that's standing in front of you today is 180 degrees different from who walked into the doors of Narcotics Anonymous. I'm going to tell you, Mike was referring to my home group. My home group is, I'm Iranian. I was born and raised in Tehran, Iran. And I came here right during the revolution of 1979. And I didn't come here by choice. I came here because my parents worked for the old government, and we would have been killed if we had stayed during that period. I helped start the first Farsi-speaking meeting of Narcotics Anonymous in Los Angeles, and that's my home group today. And I'm really honored to be able to have had a part in carrying the message of Narcotics Anonymous in another language. And I've been involved in translations of NA literature to Farsi, and I'm very honored again to have had the opportunity to do that. When I found this program, when I started feeling a little bit of relief on my obsession to use, that is, I started life for other addicts that don't have the same opportunity that we have here. You know, we have a basic text, we have a white book, we have pamphlets, we have service material, we have, you know, meetings, you know, we have opportunities, we have other recovering addicts that we can share with, you know, and there are people in other countries that don't have that, you know, and they don't have any meetings, and they, you know, there are addicts that are dying out there, and I felt very privileged to be able to at least have a small part in maybe, you know, starting a process that will help. It's going to take some time, but, you know, it will eventually happen. I believe that, you know, loving God is working in all of our lives. To tell you a little bit about me, like I said, I was born in Tehran, and I was born into a family where we looked very good on the outside, and things were pretty much insane on the inside. I know that my parents, my mom was like a little girl in the body of an adult. And she was a scary little girl who had another little girl and didn't know what to do with this little girl, you know. And my father was an adolescent in the body of an adult, and he wasn't ready to be a married man, and he wasn't ready to be responsible, you know, for a family, and faithful to a wife, and, you know, so I grew up learning a lot about how to be afraid of people, how to be afraid of facing life, and how to like do anything, you know, anything. I was taught to fear you, people, situations, and you know, and my dad basically taught me that none of you were okay. No, I wasn't okay. I was criticized, I was physically abused, I was emotionally abused, and I didn't really give any of that any validity until I started writing the Fourth Step. My first Fourth Step in NA is when all this stuff came up, and I had no idea I had so much anger inside of me. I had no idea I had so much resentment. I thought it was all me because I had grown up being told that it was all me, that it was all my fault, that if I had only been good enough, you know, that none of this would have happened, that if I had only been good enough, if I knew how to do it right, if I was obedient, if I was respectful of my parents, that I would have, you know, I would have turned out better. You know, my parents had all these dreams for me. They wanted me to be a ballerina. That's not what I wanted. And you know, and I went for a while, for a few years, and then I quit. You know, I quit, and I can't tell you the shame that I experienced because I quit. You know, I was no longer okay. You know, I was a failure right there. You know, I was just told that, you know what, you are a failure, and that's just the way it is. And at that time, you know, I started living a secret life. My earliest memories, as far as I remember, I fall back as I remember is that I used to write a lot, you know, because I was a lonely child. I was afraid to talk to anyone because my mom had sworn into secrecy. Nobody was supposed to know what was going on in my household. My mom was a famous person. She was on television, and she was like a national figure. And she looked really loving on television. She looked like the dream of a little girl. You know, if a little girl wanted a mom, like she looked like she would be like the model mother. She was a faithful wife, and you know, she was famous, and she was pretty, and she wore nice clothes, and all the little girls liked her, you know. And so nobody would believe me if I ever said anything about what was really going on in my household. So I learned that I had no friends, and I was writing. Ever since I knew how to write, I was keeping a journal, and I remember feeling that I wasn't part of this family, that there must have been, you know, they're not telling me I must be adopted, you know, and they're not telling me, and you know, that's why they're, you know, this is the way I'm getting treated, you know, and I felt like, you know, I was the only child, you know, and I felt like, you know, my cousins were loved more than I was, and, you know, the relatives were loved more than I was, and, you know, and those were my earliest feelings that I can remember. What happened was, was like when I was 9 years old, my mother had twin sons. And that was one of the turning points in my life because I was the only child up until then. I got all the attention, and I was a girl, and that's like not a very good thing when you come from a Middle Eastern Islamic country. And when my brothers were born, it was all of a sudden 2 boys. They're much more valuable than women, for those who don't know that. At least in the Middle East they are. And all of a sudden it was like I was put on the back burner, and I had to deal with life or whatever, and I was only 9 years old. And I remember being told that, you're old enough to take care of yourself and you don't really need this anymore, so you're kind of on your own. I'm not saying this to try to paint a bad picture of my parents. I really want to emphasize that. I'm saying this has been my experience, and I have found out through working with staff and writing on what I'm doing today in my life. I have found a lot of patterns of how the way I was raised has to do with the way I react to life today. And the only way that I've been able to break some of the chain of repeating the same things has been by the awareness of what actually happened. So I truly believe that I need to uncover and I need to be honest in order to be able to discover and discard, what I have gone through. By the time I was 16 years old, there was a revolution, and we came to the United States, and I thought that I'm going to be able to. By this time, I was well into my addiction in the form of not drugs, in the form of men, boys at that time. I was falling in love every other day, and I was using men. To fix me, and I remember not, kind of like knowing that I really didn't have these deep feelings for these boys, in the neighborhood, but, I kind of needed them. I remember feeling like I needed them. I needed them to, call me and, say nice things to me on the phone. I needed them to give me attention or, throw a note under, my door, when they were, riding on their bicycles in front of my house. I needed that, and even though I really didn't care for the person very much, I needed the attention, and it didn't matter who it was, and if one wasn't doing it right, I would just get rid of them and get another one, it was just like changing clothes, it wasn't that important, and I just, I didn't think there was anything wrong with that, I thought, by this time, I was already set to what I was going to do in my relationships as an adult, as a woman. By this time, I already knew men are all cheap, because my dad had been. That was the only role model I had as a man. I already knew that I needed them in order to feel okay. So what I was going to do is that I was just going to do what my dad had done, because I was never going to be a victim like my mother. I always wanted her to leave him, and she wouldn't leave him. And she would say she's not leaving him because of me. Because if she left him, then I would be forced to be raised with a stepfather, and she thought that was going to be bad, a horrible thing. And so I was going to be like my father. I was not going to be a victim. I was going to be, the predator. And that's what I did. Another addiction that I had was politics. And I really say that because that was part of what helped me to stay away from my feelings. I became a communist when I was 11 years old. And the way I did that was just, in Iran back then, that was the strongest, opposition to the Shah government. So I decided, that's what I'm going to do, I really didn't know anything about it, but I wanted to be rebellious, I wanted to do what my parents were for the Shah, so let's opposed to that is communism, so that's what I'll do, you know. And it was like a rebellious thing towards my parents, and you know, and I really didn't do much of anything except that I just read the wrong books and went, because there's a lot of censorship there, and if you have the wrong books, you're subject to like disappear. I don't care how old you are, and you know, and I read the wrong books and hung with the wrong crowds, you know, and you know, went to the underground coffee houses type of thing and tea houses and just talked philosophy, you know, about the revolution that was going to happen, and you know, and I didn't like the way the system was and how there was such a, you know, class difference. There was like the rich people and the poor people, and there was not that much middle class, and you know, and I was talking about, you know, why is this like this and it needs to be different, and you know, why is there, you know, we have a servant that is like a slave, you know, we have what I had in Iran is what we call a slave in the United States, you know, in my house, and it didn't have to go by color, you know, it went by economic status, you know. And so prejudice has existed, you know, all of my life, even though it wasn't in the form that you guys experienced it here. It was in the form of religion and in the form of socioeconomic status. And I learned to be prejudiced in that way. I came to the United States. I was a confused teenager by then. And I started going to high school. I barely spoke any English. And I was forced to go to a school where there was no English as a second language classes, and I was basically forced to just use dictionaries in order to be able to understand what was being said in the classes, and it was very difficult. It was very, very difficult for me, and I felt humiliated, and I felt that the kids made fun of me, and I mean, my self-esteem was like shot down. I felt real less than. And I made a lot of stupid mistakes in my speaking, you know, when I made an attempt to talk, and kids laughed at me, and I just withdrew even more. I got a boyfriend right away. Had to get that one, you know, and he made me feel a little okay, you know. What I was lacking from home and what I was lacking from friends in school, you know, he was trying to fulfill, and that was his job, and goddamn, he was going to do that, you know, and I controlled him, and I picked someone that I could control, you know. I definitely picked someone I could control. I picked someone where I felt better than this person, you know, and therefore I could control them, and they didn't have a very strong character. After high school, well, I was a good student in high school. I was also the least likeliest candidate who turned out to be a drug addict. Actually used drugs because, you know, I came from a family where it was like a total no-no to use drugs. Never mind the fact that my dad drinks a lot and smokes opium. But those are socially acceptable drugs, you know. Women don't do that, by the way. It's only men that are, like, entitled to smoking opium. That's not what happened with me. What happened was I finished high school with really good grades. I was a good student. I was in a lot of competition with kids. I was hanging out with kids that were good in school. So I was going to compete with them. I had to be better than them. It just wasn't much. So I graduated with very good grades and got accepted to UCLA, and I was up north in California. I moved to Los Angeles to go to college, and that was where my drug story started. You know, I started using fairly quickly. I probably was in LA for 2 weeks, and I met another man, and he introduced me to pot, and I married him. You know, and it went in that order. You know, I fell in love. You know, I fell in love with the pot. You know, and I thought I fell in love with him. And so I started using that, and very soon that wasn't enough. And you know, I had a good job, and I was a student, and I was getting very good grades at the time, and and I met another man. I mean, it was like you would serve your purpose after a while, and I had to kind of move on. I met somebody else, and the next person was a little bit more advanced in his drug use than the last one. So he introduced me to freebasing, and I remember the first first time that I ever picked up a pipe and I took a hit, I had a blackout. I was laying on the floor and I was gone. And I come to with this guy slapping me in the face. And I open my eyes and I'm on the floor, and the first thing that comes out of my mouth is, give me another hit. You know, there was absolutely no concern about the fact that I'm laying on the floor. No concern about the fact that you're slapping me. Just give me another hit, you know. And that started my drugs, my real insane drug use. I used and I graduated from cocaine to heroin and graduated from heroin to methadone, I went all the way. I went all the way, and I went all the way in a very short period of time. It didn't take very long for me. I didn't try to be a functional addict. I didn't even try to maintain a job. It was not even, an option. I didn't have time, for working. I used as a job. That was my job. I woke up every morning. I coughed. I used. I didn't even worry about the next day until the next day came. I really lived one day at a time back then. I really didn't care about tomorrow. As long as I was loaded today, that's all that mattered. And what happened was that, I ended up in several treatment facilities, several psychiatric hospitals, and through the psych hospitals, I got introduced to 12-step fellowship programs, not Narcotics Anonymous, and I thought these people were nuts. I mean, first of all, I was better than. I was not one of you, one of them. Didn't matter. I wasn't ready. I was not ready to get anything. I felt like, my problem is him. The guy that I was in love with now, who had turned me on to all these wonderful drugs. And he was the problem. If I got rid of him, that I was going to be okay. Only if I could just not see him anymore, I wouldn't use anymore. Wrong. Because I got rid of him, and I continued on using. And then I went back to him since I was going to continue using anyway. It was kind of crazy. It was really crazy. Everything I did was based on impulse. I didn't make any decisions out of thinking. I didn't think about anything. I just felt like it and I did it. And that's how I lived my life. And I went through my credit, and I went through every dollar that I had. And by the way, I was also stealing way before I ever used drugs. So I can't use the excuse of the fact that I needed drugs in order to justify my stealing. I was a thief way before I was used. I had stolen a whole bunch of money, and I had it stashed in the bank. And I went through all of that, and it was that was just what I did. And what ended up happening for me was that I ended up on the methadone maintenance program. And I ended up where I said I was never going to be, those things you say you're never going to do, and then you end up doing them. I had said to myself when I was very young, when I saw my dad cheat with all these women, that I was never going to break a home, that I was never going to be with a married man. And what happened was that I was with a married man. He was my sugar daddy, and he had a lot of money, and I needed money, and I didn't have the guts to prostitute myself on the street, so that's how I, had money, was through him. And what happened was that I just couldn't live with myself anymore, and I believe that I hit a spiritual bottom. It got to the point where no matter how much I used, I couldn't turn off the guilt and the shame that I felt behind being with this man. And I was also terrified of the fact that I was on methadone maintenance, and I was afraid that I was never going to be able to get off. And that was a healthy fear. What happened was I was going to meetings, by the way. I was going to other fellowship meetings while I was using. And that's very important for me to say because I was going to other fellowship powerless over one drug. So I wasn't taking that one drug, and I was going there. But I was taking methadone, I was taking heroin, I was taking Xanax, and it didn't really matter. And I was using these other stuff, and I would take chips, and I would, and then I would, after 60 days I would relapse, and then I would relapse on that drug that they were saying I shouldn't take, and, I was never clean, and I kept going to these meetings, and I really didn't hear anything, and I really didn't see anything that I wanted, and the only people that really walked up to me were the men who wanted to take me out for coffee, and they wanted to, what they wanted to do. What happened was that I remember we had an Narcotics Anonymous meeting in this hospital that I was in, but it was when the cool people came, and the cool people basically hung outside and smoked cigarettes and talked about drugs, and I remember that I had been to one of those. So I said, why don't I just try one of these meetings, and I had never even seen a basic text. I didn't even know it existed. I had been given the other book to read when I was in the treatment facility, and I thought these people were nuts. I mean, I really had an attitude problem with that. I felt like I had spent too much money on my drugs to be called an alcoholic. I really... I walked into an Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and I saw a basic text. And since all my life I thought all my problems are going to be solved through books, I bought one. I always read a lot. I read a lot because I thought I was going to find out what's really wrong with me. I majored in psychology in college because I was going to diagnose myself, and I was going to find out what's really going on. So I bought this basic text with the same mentality, and I was on methadone maintenance, and I went home and I opened it up, and it said, who's an addict? And in it said, most of us believe that we were addicts way before we ever started using drugs. And that was the first spiritual awakening that I had, because I started crying, and I for the first time in all those years that I was trying to find another way, but I felt like there were actually people who understood what I was going through. I felt that empathy from you guys just by reading that one page of the text. And I'm so grateful for the basic text, because that's how I found my recovery. I didn't find my recovery necessarily in the room. I found my recovery through the basic text. It opened my mind to give this program a chance. That's where I felt it. And I was at the conference just this last week, and I was at one of these zonal forum things, and they were talking about how they got the message from another addict, and that, that I should not feel so passionate about wanting NA literature in pharmacy. That why am I so passionate about it? And they were able to get it from another addict, and other people should too. And I said, what, it's like, that's not how I got it. I got it through the basic text, and what, back in my country, there aren't any meetings, so you can't get the therapeutic value of one addict helping another there anyways. What happened was that I decided that I was going to detox off methadone, and I was going to go low on my doses, and I started going to Narcotics Anonymous meetings, and I started, just lowering my dose. And in the meantime, towards the end, I met this lady. She walked up to me after a meeting, and she introduced herself, and she, because she saw me, sitting in the meeting and not saying anything, and she came up to me and introduced herself and gave me, and she asked for my phone number, and that's very important, because, she didn't just give me her phone number, she took my phone number, and she said that she was going to call me, and she did. She called me the next day, and she asked me if I wanted to go to a meeting, and I went to a meeting with her, and she asked me if I had used that day. And I told her, well, I'm on methadone, and I'm taking Xanax, Xanax is not a problem, is it, The doctor takes it. That was not something I was going to give up, believe me, that one. So she said, well, you're not clean, And I said, what do you mean I'm not clean? I said, she said, you know what, it's like, you don't ever have to go back to that methadone clinic. And I thought she was crazy. I said, have you ever kicked methadone before? And she said, no. And I said, well, then you definitely don't know what you're talking about. And then she said, have you ever kicked before? And I said, yes. She goes, well, you can kick again. And I was like, oh, she's a smart ass, I had an attitude problem when I got clean. And, but the miracle where my higher power intervened in my life is that I did not go back to that methadone clinic that day after she picked me up. And I have been clean ever since. I'm really grateful to her because she only had 9 months clean. And she became my sponsor. And that's an example for me that it's not about how much time you have. It's about the quality of recovery. And this woman had recovery, and she helped me, the first year of my recovery, and she moved away. She taught me how to work the steps. She got me on the steps on a right-away basis, and the reason for that was that I complained a lot. I was always complaining. I was probably the whiniest newcomer. You would want to meet. And I didn't have a problem saying it either. I complained about my parents and my brother and the government and everything in meetings. And I wasn't shy about, sharing. I said it, and people would just look at me and tell me to keep coming back, and, and it's like, and most people basically stayed away from me, and that's the truth, most, especially women, except for my sponsor and another woman, most women were kind of like, they would say hi to me, but they would really quickly, just pass me by. I'm sure that had something to do with the way I dressed, also because I dressed up a lot. I would wear high heels and wear leather and a ton of makeup and do my hair and wear a lot of jewelry and and that's how I would go to meetings, and that's all I knew, when I got clean. I didn't have any casual clothes, all I did was go to nightclubs, that was all I did, in my active addiction, and when I got clean I didn't even own a pair of sweats, I didn't have anything like that, and it intimidated women, it did intimidate the women around where I got clean, and they basically stayed away from me, for the most part, but what happened was that through the help of the sponsor, I started changing, and I remember her telling me that this is a program of change, and that if you want to be able to fit into your own skin, which is what I was asking for all the time, how do I fit into my skin? How do I fit into my skin? I want to dump out of my skin. I want to use, that's all I said, my first year and a half. And she kept telling me, you work the steps. You work the steps. And I couldn't understand the correlation between the fact that I wanted to kill myself or kill you, and then writing about the fact that I'm powerless over my addiction. I couldn't, and she kept telling me, Steffi, your disease was much deeper than just the use of drugs. You have this self-destructive, self-obsessive, self-centered disease, and that it's out to get you, and never mind the fact that I had the worst kick of my life when I stopped going to that methadone clinic. You know, it was just really hard. It took about 6 months before I could sleep like 5 hours a night. You know, it was really bad. And, you know, and I was going to meetings, and I didn't get clean through a recovery house, and I didn't get clean through a treatment center. I got clean through the means of Narcotics Anonymous. It can be done. You know, I sat in my hands. I drank a lot of fluid. I spilled a lot of coffee on me. But you know what? It's like the people in the room loved me. And they accepted me. And they allowed me to come and wine. And they didn't tell me to go and never come back. You know, maybe they didn't befriend me, but they didn't tell me to leave and not come back. You know, and I'm grateful for that. And there were a lot of women that were examples of recovery to me, and they wanted what I had, and they had that peace in their eyes, and, you know, and they looked like, you know, they were happy. You know, they had that glimmer in their eyes, and I wanted what they had, you know, and I was willing to go to any length to get it. And I started, you know, on this journey, and many miracles have happened, you know, since I started working with steps. You know, for me, learning to live the principles of the steps has been the most freedom-producing experience that I've had in recovery. And every time I forget or I become complacent about applying these principles in my life, I get in a lot of uncomfortable feelings and I get in a lot of pain. I had a really hard time with the concept of a higher power. And when it came to the second step, I felt like this is where I was going to flunk. You know, this is where I was not going to be able to make it. And I wanted to make it. And I had the obsession to use. And the obsession to use drugs was not removed until I had like a year clean. You know, it took a long time for me to have the obsession to be removed. But what happened was that the desire for wanting to be clean was greater than my desire to use. You know, and that's what kept me coming back, and that's what kept me clean through that first year. And I truly believe that it was a higher power that was working in my life, even though that I wasn't aware of this power. The way my sponsor had me, you know, come to believe in the power greater than myself was that she wanted me to pray. And she wanted me to pray on my knees. And she said that the reason I need to get on my knees is not because God wants me to get on my knees. It's because I need to get on my knees to remember that I'm not the higher power. You know, it's a position of humility and humbleness, and I need to get on my knees. And I said, well, what do I pray to? You know, I had no idea. She said, you pray to whatever you want to pray to. I said, well, what is that? You know, and she said, just pray to whatever. I don't know. She wouldn't tell me, you know. And I said, fine, you know, I'm just going to pray to whatever, you know. And that's what I prayed to. You know, I remember my first prayer was that, you know, whatever is there, you know, if you can hear me, you know, please give me the willingness to come to believe in you. It was that simple, you know, just give me the willingness, because I had such a block against God, because I'm a Muslim and I was, that is not a loving way to come to believe in a God. Believe me on that one. I felt like I was, you know, one more time that punishing God, you know, that God that didn't like women, the one that didn't like women to have sex, and, you know, they had to be virgins until they got married, and I knew I was going to go to hell. You know, it's like I could not pray to that God, you know. I wanted a God that was loving and cared about me, that I wanted a God that I could feel, you know, and I didn't want my parents' God, and I didn't want the God that the religion would dictate to me that if I don't do this, I'm going to burn in hell, or, you know, whatever. And, you know, so I started praying to whatever is there, and I started this journey of searching for a higher power. And I was persistent. I mean, even though for a long time I really didn't feel anything, I just kept doing it. I just kept doing it because you told me that you had kept doing it and that you had found one. So I had faith in what you were telling me. So really, essentially, my higher power was the group in the beginning, was you people, because you people told me that you had found one, and that you told me that if I tried and if I went after it, that I was going to find one too. And that's how I started the journey of finding a higher power. And the word could means a lot to me in the second step, because I have to allow this higher power to restore me to sanity. It doesn't say it will restore us to sanity. It says it could restore us to sanity. And for a long time I missed that word, could, and I just say, well, it's not doing it, And the reality was that I wasn't getting out of the way, and I wasn't allowing this loving God to work in my life. And then I went on to the third step, and my concept of the third step has changed over the last few years a lot, and I have to test myself on this third step on a very, almost daily basis, because I get into a lot of fear. And I want to control situations. Control is my biggest character defect today that stands in my way of being able to live a happy, joyous life. And and every time I get into that, I've learned through you people that I need to question myself as, have I taken a proper third step or not? Have I really made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of a loving God, or am I bullshitting? Because if I've really done that, then I don't need to worry about what's going to happen in the job. I don't need to worry about what's going to happen with the relationship. I don't have to worry about anything, because my life is, I will turn it over, And I really need to remind myself of that on a regular basis, because I'm a very fear-based person. I fall into that a lot, And then, writing your fourth step was not as hard as writing your sixth step, I can tell you that much. I thought the fourth step was going to be bad. Wrong. Everything I've always thought was wrong anyways. This was no exception. I wrote a fourth step. My first fourth step, I took everybody else's inventory. I took my mom's inventory, my dad's inventory. I took everybody's inventory. And then when I finished, doing the fifth, my sponsor gave me a list of defects. And I'm like, and there was 75 defects on this page, and I looked at her and I said, what the hell is this, And she said, these are the defects, I looked at it fear of being loved. I'm like, what do you mean? I wanted to be loved all my life. How could you tell me that I have the fear of being loved? She said, you'll find out. She would tell me these smart things that I thought, well, why is she withholding information from me? She knows something that she's not telling me, And she said, I want you to take this with you, and I want you to write about how you act on these defects. I want you to write about, I want examples, and that was hard, and I had to do that, and I've had the privilege of working under 6 steps, and it has, for me, changed, and I'm writing on the 6th step right now, I tell you, man, it's like you were sharing last night about they don't get removed, they just get placed somewhere else, and I'm really getting to see that in my life today, and I'm getting to see how much the longer I stay clean and the more I work the steps and the more I learn more about my disease, how much more clever my disease gets. My disease is, it tells me you're going to too many meetings, Steffi. It's like you don't see too many women with over 5 years clean going to 5 or 6 meetings a week, not in my area, and it's like my head tells me, you know what, you don't have a life. You're going to too many meetings. You need to get a life. You need to do something else. And then I start listening to it. And then I go to 2 meetings, and then I go, why am I insane? Why is my life getting unmanageable again? And what, it's like maybe I am sicker. I don't know. I think that I need meetings. An hour or an hour and a half of my day can be devoted to a meeting. That's like time for me. There's plenty of time to take care of whatever else that needs to be taken care of during the day. An hour and a half of my time in the day is the least I can do for my recovery on a daily basis, And I really only talk about the sense a lot because that's where the core of this program is for me. That's where I have learned to live life on life's terms and not for cash, and not hurt you, and not leave a path of destruction behind me as I'm going through life, because that's what I did. I bulldozed through life and I destroyed anything that was in my way, whether I was clean or whether I was using. It really didn't matter, It's like I have a dysfunctional way of living life, and I've had to accept that, and through the 6th and the 7th step is where I get an opportunity to take a look at me, to take a look at what am I doing? How am I reacting to life? How am I reacting to you? Am I blaming you again? Am I judging you again? What is it about me that I don't like that I see in you and that I judge you? What is going on with me? And that's kind of material also, but because I learned to do that through being the 6th and 7th step, and through, being willing to have, asking loving God for the courage to take a look at me and not be afraid of who I was going to see. Because I was so afraid that if you take away these defects or these shortcomings, that I was going to be left with nothing. And what I was taught was that in the 7th step, I need to come up with the opposites of my defect, with the spiritual principles of the step, and I need to replace the defects with those, with the spiritual principles. And that is not an easy thing to do. That is much easier said than done. Especially for an addict like me, who all of her life was just going through life, doing whatever she wanted to do, whenever she wanted to do it, never had to take a look at self, always had to point, finger pointed at you so that, I would never have to look at me. And it's like now, that's all changed. Now I'm looking at me. Now I'm looking at, what am I doing? What is my expectations here? Why am I feeling like this? What's going on with me? And I have to ask myself those questions on a daily basis in order to be able to maintain my recovery. That's been very important for me. The 8th and 9th step, I got to tell you, I did not want to work them. I had a lot of financial amends to make, and other than other kinds of amends, and I was not going to make financial amends. I was not going to make financial amends. It was too much. I was never going to be able to make it, and I did you know, and the first time around I ran away from it, and my sponsor moved away, and I had to get another sponsor, and a new sponsor. You know, I told her, you know, I'm supposed to be on my 8th step, but I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it, you know. And she said, well, you need to start on the 1st step. So that's what I did. I got on the 1st step again. She said, you obviously, you know, not ready yet, you know. So we got back, you know, when I got back on the 8th step the second time around, I decided that I wanted to change sponsors, you know. The last time she moved away, so it made it very convenient, you know. And this time, you know, I again wanted to change sponsors, and some of the reasons I wanted to change sponsors was valid, okay. But I know me, okay. I know I didn't want to work the 8th and 9th step, okay. So I told myself what was going on, you know. I told her this is what's going on, and I'm thinking about, you know, getting another sponsor, and this is my pattern, and this is what I do, you know. And she said, okay, can you make a commitment that you do 8 and 9 with me, and it's before you change your sponsor? And I said, yeah, I can do that, you know. And that's what I did, you know. And I wrote a list, and oh man, okay. You know, I wrote a list, and you know, I prayed about it, and my ego got in the way, and I was very resentful, and because I felt like, you know, I was always a victim, you know. You were supposed to make amends to me. What do you mean make amends to you? I mean, it was just like, that is not, you know, my thinking was in a different way, and you know, I'm really glad that I did, you know, write this list, because you know what it's like, I started making amends in the 9th step, and I started finding out what amends were really about. That amends wasn't about me saying I'm sorry, you know, that amends was about me changing the behavior, you know, and that I could come and I'd say I'm sorry a million times and turn around and repeat the same behavior with another person over the same person and say I'm sorry again, you know. And that's not what the 9th step means to me today. It means like not stealing anymore, you know. It means paying back, you know, what I stole to the best of my ability, you know. It means turning around and not abusing you anymore. It means, you know, making amends to all the men that I hurt through the way I treat my husband today. You know, that's what it means, you know. Most of the men that I was with, I cannot even get a hold of today. I don't even know where they are. And there were many, you know, nameless faces, you know, in my life. And you know, and I learned that I needed to change my behavior. And as long as I wasn't that same person anymore, that I was doing okay. And I've come a lot of freedom through the 9th step. And I'm really glad that I, you know, my higher power gave me the courage to do it. You know, the 10th step, you know, I kind of touched on, you know, it's something that I have to do on a daily basis, you know, to maintain my recovery. And, you know, and on the 11th step, you know, I really got to say that, you know what, I went on a search for a loving God. You know, I needed to find something that I felt. And, you know, and I was told that it was okay for me to, you know, read other books and other spiritual books and, you know, find my own way and find my own path. And, you know, and I did find the path, you know, that works for me. And I'm really grateful for that. And I don't do anything religiously. I don't like a lot of structure. I don't like a lot of anybody telling me what to do. I kind of like those kind of, you know, leave me alone, you know, all comfort when I feel like coming to a type of, you know, path. You know, I'm very, you know, I like freedom. You know, I don't like anybody to like tell me what to do and point the finger at me and this is how you do it or else. And, you know, I don't like that. And, you know, and what I have found, you know, basically I've learned that, you know, what there's only two forces in this world, and one is love and one is fear. You know, and if I'm not coming from love, then I must be in fear. And it's really that simple. You know, that if I'm not in the state of peace, then I'm in fear. You know, and I've learned that, you know, through the path that I found. And, you know, and it's not a church that I go to, and it's not something that I practice outside the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. It's something that I do right here, you know, and I do it between me and my God, and it seems to work really well for me. I do meditate, you know, I don't do it on a regular basis, I'm going to admit to that, but I have at times done it on a regular basis, and I've gotten a lot from it when I do. You know, and I heard a lady share with me one time where she said, you know, it's like, if you feel sick, you go to a doctor. But if you feel spiritually sick, you feel like you don't have the time to go to God and talk to God and allow God to work in your life. If I'm sick, I find the time to go to the doctor. If I'm spiritually sick, I need to do the same thing. And I've learned to do that, and it comes through a lot of pain. I want you to know that none of the things that I'm sharing about today has come easily for me. Everything that I've learned in recovery has come through a great deal of me, banging my head against the wall and, wanting to do it my way. I'm very stubborn. I'm very rebellious. I'm very egotistical. Those are definitely me, and I have had to learn the hard way in most of the things that I've learned. Today is my anniversary, my wedding anniversary. I want to say happy anniversary to my husband and tell him that I love him very much. He's put up with me a lot. I'm not an easy person to live with, and I know it. I'm not one of those women that says yes, sir. I rebelled against that. That was what they wanted me to be. I have my own, and I love my husband for being man enough to be able to let me be who I am. And it takes a lot for someone to, especially another addict, to have enough recovery to not get threatened by this, woman having her own opinions, and not having to always agree on everything. And he definitely, has that much recovery, and I'm really grateful, that God has put him in my life. We met, like Mike was saying, we met through service actually, and we've been together for about 4 years now, and I've learned a lot about myself and about how the Word He steps in my life by being in a relationship with Him. I've learned about communication. I have learned about loving another person and trying to be selfless. I've learned about, not being needy all the time. I've learned a lot. I've learned to let him go when I wanted to hold on. I've learned that I can't control him. And I've learned all those things by, again, banging my head against the wall and trying to do it the other way. My first instinct is always to do it the disease way. It's like, I still haven't gotten recovered enough that I just automatically do it the right way. It hasn't happened for me yet. The first thought is always negative, and then, hopefully I'll think about it long enough to make another decision, or talk to someone about it, I have a good sponsor in my life today. I've gone through problems finding the sponsor that works for me, and today, I have a sponsor who loves me, and even though she doesn't have a lot of time all the time, I know that she does care about me, and I know that if worse comes to worse, that she'll make the time for me. What I respect about my sponsor today is that she has a good knowledge of working the steps, and that's what I want from her. And she's a lot like me, and she's like ahead of me on this journey of recovery, but our personalities are very much alike, and I get a lot from just, seeing her and being with her. And one of the most precious lessons that I've learned in the last couple of years in my relationship with other women is that, I always wanted to take. I thought that a relationship with another woman didn't take cultivation. I thought that was going to automatically happen, and it should happen, and we're in recovery, and you're supposed to love me, and you're supposed to accept me because I'm in this program, and that was not my experience. I wasn't just automatically accepted and loved just because I raised my hand and said that I'm an addict. I had to learn to be a friend. I had to learn to be giving in relationships with other women, and also with my sponsor. I had learned to respect my sponsor, to ask her how she's doing, and not to always be talking about what's going on with me, because I'm a self-centered person. I need to practice not not being so self-centered, you know. And what I do is that I ask her how she's doing, and I listen to her, and it's not always about me, and what's going on with me, you know. And I'm really grateful that I have learned that lesson. I actually have quality women in my life today, and that also has come from, you know, making a lot of mistakes and, you know, going after all the women who rejected me and wanted to close the door on my face. And, you know, my past those kind of experiences, and those are the kind of things that I don't really share about a lot, you know, and I hear like, oh, everything was great, I was holding on, and, you know, and that has not been my experience, and that's why it's important for me now that I have an opportunity to share from a podium that I need to share my experience with you, that, you know what, it's like reality happens in our rooms, and there's personality in our rooms, and some people who don't like some people, you know, and that's just the way it is, and it may be because of what the country I come from, it may be prejudice, it may not be, it may be something else, you know, so whatever it is, that's the way it is, and I can't change that, and I need to accept people for who they are, and find what works for me, find the people in my life that are willing to be there for me and to love me, you know, and I'm grateful that I finally come to accept that, but for a long time I had resentment, you know, that I was caring about the women in the program, you know, and I've learned to let that go. I don't know, you know, I have about 4 sponsees right now in my life that they are just wonderful women. I mean, each one of them teaches me so much, and they're from all colors and all ethnic backgrounds, and, you know, I got, you know, all different kinds of sponsees, and God bless them, you know, they add so much to my recovery, you know, I learned so much from them, and, you know, the other day, like, before I came home and called them, had to call and left a message, and, you know, and she wanted to thank me just for being her sponsor, you know, and for, like, being there for her, and for giving her the time, you know, that she wasn't getting from her sponsor before, and, you know, and I'm so grateful that I can give that today, you know, because for a long time I didn't want to give that because I really didn't get it myself. So I was thinking, if I don't get it, who am I going to get it? You know, and I said, but how am I supposed to give away something I never got? You know, but the thing is, that, you know what, it's like, through my experiences I have learned that, you know what, I can be there for you. You know, I can be there for you. And every time I withhold something from you, I'm withholding something from myself. I'm robbing my own self from my recovery. You know, and I've learned to give, and it feels good today. You know, it's not about, you know, giving and being empty. It's about giving and getting fuller and fuller every time I give. You know, I really just want to end it with just giving you this report that, you know, we have a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous going on in Iran that's been going on for 1 year, and it's, you know, and one of our fellow members just went there 2 months ago, and he went there to start an H&I meeting in a treatment facility. And you know, I want to ask you all to pray for him, because it's very dangerous what he's doing. The government doesn't have an understanding of the disease of addiction, and addicts get put away for life, and they don't ever get a chance. And even though the basic test hasn't gotten to its final grasp form yet, but it's usable, and, you know, for those addicts who don't speak English, you know, for one day it will be, and that's what I feel like my mission is, that's what I'm supposed to do, and that's what I've been pursuing to do. With that, I want to really thank you for sitting and listening to me,